The Apache man had once believed that love was a bond stronger than steel, a sacred fire guarded by ancestors and blessed by the spirits of the land. His heart, fierce in battle, softened only for the woman he had chosen as his wife. She was his sun in the mornings, his solace in the nights, and the promise he carried when he rode into war. To him, loyalty was not a choice but a law of the soul unbreakable, eternal. But one evening, under a sky bruised with the colors of dusk, that law was shattered. He had returned earlier than expected from a hunting journey. The air smelled of mesquite smoke as he approached his lodge. His horse neighed low, uneasy, and the Apache man felt a flicker of unease in his chest. He stepped quietly, instinctively cautious, as warriors often did when danger was near. Yet what he found was not an enemy with weapons drawn, but something far more piercing. Through the thin hide of the lodge, he heard laughter, her laughter. Not the kind she shared with him when she teased him about his seriousness, not the soft laugh that belonged only to their nights together. This was brighter, reckless, filled with a thrill that did not belong to him. He froze. When he pushed aside the flap and entered, the truth struck harder than any arrow. His wife was not alone. Another man, an outsider who had lingered near the village, claiming to trade, was with her. Their closeness, their touch, the intimacy written across their faces, told him everything before a single word was spoken. For a long moment, no one moved. The air was thick with the silence of betrayal. The outsider stiffened, eyes wide with the awareness that he had trespassed into sacred ground. His wife gasped, her hand pulling back as though caught in flame. But it was not flame, it was the ruin of trust, the collapse of a world. The Apache man did not rage outwardly. His people believed that true strength was in restraint, that storms could rage silently and still destroy everything in their path. He stood there, tall and unyielding, his dark eyes holding hers. In that gaze she could see the weight of her choices, the breaking of vows, the desecration of love that had been freely given. Why? He asked at last, his voice low and hollow. Her lips trembled, but no answer came. The outsider shifted, perhaps expecting a blade, perhaps preparing to flee, but the Apache man did nothing. Instead, he turned and walked out, each step carrying the heaviness of a heart that had been pierced in a place no weapon could reach. Outside, the desert wind caught his hair, tugging at it as if to remind him that life still moved forward. But for him, time had fractured. The songs his wife once sang by the fire, the warmth of her hand in his, the laughter they had shared, each memory now carried a jagged edge. Love, which had been a sanctuary, was now a battlefield littered with the wreckage of broken trust. That night, he sat alone at the edge of the village. The stars above seemed distant, cold, no longer the guiding lights they once were. His people passed him with cautious glances, sensing the storm within him, but none dared intrude. They knew a warrior's pain was not to be soothed by words. In his chest, grief and rage warred with one another. Part of him wanted to ride after the outsider and paint the desert red with vengeance. Another part whispered of forgiveness, though the wound was too fresh for such mercy. But above all, there was emptiness, a hollow space where love had lived, now replaced by the silence of betrayal. It was in that silence that the Apache man understood something unyielding. The heart could be stronger than any bow, yet when it broke, the fragments cut deeper than obsidian. His wife's betrayal was not merely an act of passion. It was the unraveling of the very fabric that had bound him to life with trust and devotion. The scar she left would not fade quickly. It would become part of him, shaping every choice he made from that day forward. A warrior could heal from wounds of the flesh, but the wounds she had given him would follow him into every dawn, every battle, and every quiet night when he lay alone. And so, under the cold watch of the stars, the Apache man buried his old heart and rose with a new one, scarred, hardened, and unwilling to ever be fooled by the warmth of love again. Yet the spirits of the land, ever mysterious, had other paths waiting for him. The days after his wife's betrayal passed like shadows across the desert, silent, stretching, and heavy with emptiness. The Apache man could not bear the village's watchful eyes, nor the whispers that crawled like snakes through the campfires at night. Among his people, betrayal was not just a private wound. It carried shame like a stain on the spirit that no water could wash away. And though no one spoke of it to his face, he felt the weight of their pity pressing against his shoulders. So he left. One dawn, before the sun had crept over the horizon, he saddled his horse and rode into the desert without a word. His departure was not marked by anger or farewell. It was simply the choice of a man who had lost the only tether that bound him to home. The desert, vast and merciless, became his refuge. The land met him with silence. No laughter echoed here. No warmth of a shared fire softened the night. Only the whisper of wind through the dry grasses, the cry of a hawk circling high above, and the crunch of hooves upon parched earth kept him company. In that silence, his thoughts grew louder memories of his wife's touch, the vision of her betrayal, and the question that gnawed at him endlessly. Was love ever real? Or had it been a dream crafted by his own foolish heart? The desert did not answer, but it listened. By day, the sun burned him mercilessly. Sweat carved lines through the dust on his skin, and his lips cracked under the unforgiving heat. Yet he welcomed the punishment, as though the land itself was cleansing him of weakness. By night, the cold wrapped around him like a shroud. The stars glittered in the black sky, distant and indifferent. He lay on the hard ground, staring upward, searching for meaning in their patterns. The elders had once told him the stars carried the stories of their ancestors, guiding the living. But now, even the constellations seemed to turn their gaze away from him. Time blurred in the desert. Days bled into nights until he no longer counted them. Hunger gnawed, thirst sharpened, but deeper still was the ache of solitude. He was a warrior used to hardship, yet loneliness was a wound harder to endure than hunger or thirst. The desert tested him, stripping away pride, stripping away anger, until only the raw wound of his broken heart remained. At moments, he almost gave in to despair. He would sit on a rocky ledge, watching the horizon shimmer in the heat, and wonder if life had lost its meaning. What was the purpose of a warrior with no love to protect, no family to honor, no home to return to? He could ride into battle, yes, but battles end. What remains when the fighting is over? And yet, within the silence, something stirred. The desert's solitude, harsh as it was, became a mirror. In its vast emptiness, he began to see himself clearly. The betrayal was not his fault, though his pride had tried to convince him otherwise. He had given his love freely, fully, as a warrior should. It was she who had broken the sacred vow, not him. The shame was hers to carry out slowly. That realization began to harden him, not into bitterness, but into strength. The desert, with its endless horizon, whispered lessons of endurance. Just as the cactus holds life within despite its thorned armor, so too could his heart hold strength despite its scars. Just as the river carves through stone over centuries, so too would time carve away his grief. One evening, as the sun sank and painted the sky in blood red and gold, he stood alone atop a ridge. The wind swept across the land, carrying the scent of sage and dust. For the first time since he had left his village, he felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Not joy, not peace, but the faintest ember of hope. Perhaps his heart, though scarred, was not entirely dead. Perhaps there was still a path waiting for him beyond the horizon. The desert had not healed him, but it had stripped him bare, leaving only truth. And truth, no matter how painful, was the foundation of strength. He mounted his horse once more, his gaze fixed on the river valley far in the distance. He did not know what awaited him there, only that the silence of the desert had taught him he could no longer remain still. Somewhere beyond the scars of betrayal, life waited, and it was there, by the water's edge, that his path would cross with the one who would change everything. The Apache man followed the river for days, his horse carrying him along the winding banks where life clung stubbornly to the water's edge. The river was a reminder that even in the harshest desert, there could be places where the earth softened and gave rise to green. Yet for him, it was not beauty he sought but survival. The desert had taken its toll, his lips were split, his body leaner than before, and his spirit still wrapped in silence. It was on a twilight evening, when the sun dipped low and painted the water in ribbons of fire and shadow, that he heard it, a voice, soft, melodic, carrying on the wind like a thread of smoke. At first he thought it was memory playing tricks, the echo of his wife's laughter twisting cruelly in his mind. But no, this was different. It was not laughter but song, and its sound touched something within him he thought long buried. The notes were tender, mournful, yet filled with strength, like the cry of a bird refusing to be silenced by the storm. He dismounted, tying his horse to a mesquite tree, and crept closer. The instincts of a warrior guided his steps, silent, cautious, each movement calculated as if approaching an enemy camp. But what he found was no enemy. By the river's bend, a woman knelt on the sand. She was not Apache, but carried the earth's dust in her skin and the resilience of the land in her posture. Her hair, long and dark, hung loose as she washed a bundle of herbs in the shallows. The song rose from her lips, weaving through the evening air like a prayer. He stood in the shadows, watching. Something in him stirred, a stirring that was both unsettling and unfamiliar. He had thought his heart was nothing but stone now, but the sound of her voice chipped at it, as if testing its hardness. The woman suddenly stopped singing and turned her head, her eyes sweeping the brush where he stood. There was no fear in her gaze, only awareness. "You've been listening," she said, her voice steady, carrying across the water. Caught. The Apache man stepped forward. He was not accustomed to shame, yet he felt as though he had intruded upon something sacred. "Your song," he said simply. "It carries far." She studied him for a long moment. Most would have flinched at the sight of him, a tall warrior, weathered by the desert, his face carved with the hardness of betrayal. But she did not. Instead, she offered the faintest smile. Songs are meant to travel. They heal what the silence breaks. Her words lingered in him like the echo of the song itself. He approached slowly, keeping a respectful distance. He did not sit, did not relax, but his eyes did not leave her. "Who are you?" he asked. "A healer," she answered, rinsing the herbs before laying them carefully on a woven cloth. "I walk where the river leads. Sometimes people need my hands. Sometimes they need my songs. And you travel alone?" he asked, disbelief threading his tone. "Alone does not always mean unprotected," she said, her gaze steady, as if daring him to test the truth of her words. For the first time in many moons, the Apache man felt the faint pull of curiosity. This woman was unlike his wife, whose beauty had once captivated but whose heart had betrayed. This one carried herself with quiet strength, not seeking to dazzle but to endure. Her presence was not a flame that consumed, but a steady fire that warmed the cold edges of his silence. That night he camped near the river. The healer did not invite him, nor did he ask, but they remained within sight of each other's firelight. She sang again as the stars rose, a low melody that seemed to weave into the night itself. He lay on his blanket, staring at the sky, listening. For the first time since his heart had been broken, the silence inside him shifted. The betrayal had not vanished, nor had the scar healed, but the song reached the hollow places, filling them with something he could not yet name. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps it was danger. He did not know, but he knew this. The desert had stripped him down to nothing, and now, by the river, the stranger's song had reminded him he was still alive. The Apache man did not seek companionship, and yet he did not ride away. Each morning, he found himself waking near the same bend in the river where the healer kept her small camp. He told himself it was the water, the shade of the willows, the abundance of game that drew him back. But in truth, it was something else. It was the quiet presence of the woman whose song had unsettled his silence. Her name, he learned, was Naya. She spoke little of herself, but her hands told her story. They were strong, scarred from grinding roots and tending fires, yet gentle when she gathered herbs or bound wounds. Once, when a thorn from a mesquite bush pierced his palm, she took his hand without hesitation. Her fingers worked with care, steady and sure, removing the barb and pressing herbs into the cut. "You've carried worse," she said softly, her eyes glancing at the scars that crossed his arm, reminders of battles past. "Yes," he answered, his voice low. "But not all wounds are seen." Her gaze lingered on him, searching as though she could see past the hardness of his face into the storm beneath. But she did not pry. Instead, she pressed his hand gently back to him and said only, "Some wounds are not meant to close quickly. They must breathe." Her words clung to him, stirring something deep in his chest. He had heard many speak of healing, elders, warriors, even his wife in times past, but never like this. Naya did not dismiss his pain, nor try to fill it with false comfort. She acknowledged it, honored it, as though it were not weakness but proof of his strength. Day by day, he found himself watching her. The way she bent low to gather wildflowers and roots, humming as she worked. The way she spoke to the river as though it were an old friend. The way she shared food without hesitation, never asking for more than silence in return. She did not demand his story, yet she gave pieces of hers in fragments, scattered like stones along a path. Her people had been taken by sickness when she was young. She had learned the art of healing from an old grandmother, carrying the knowledge into her wandering life. "The land gives what is needed," she said once, showing him how willow bark eased pain. "But it asks patience. Those who rush past its gifts find nothing. Patience." The word cut through him. He had once rushed into love, into trust, believing his heart would be safe in his wife's hands. And look where that had led him, to betrayal, to desert silence, to scars that still bled. Yet with Naya, patience came naturally. He did not feel the pull of urgency, nor the desperation of hunger. He simply felt steady. One evening, as firelight flickered against the river's edge, he asked her to sing again. She looked at him, surprised, then smiled faintly. "You listen differently now," she said. "What do you mean?" "Before, your ears were sharp, like a warrior hunting for danger. Now they are open." He did not answer. He only listened as her song rose, carrying through the night. The melody wrapped around him, not like a net to capture, but like a blanket against the cold. For the first time since his heart had broken, he allowed himself to close his eyes, not in vigilance but in rest. And as he drifted between wakefulness and sleep, he realized with unease and something close to wonder that his heart was stirring again, that it was not healed. The scar of betrayal still throbbed, and the memory of his wife's laughter with another man still haunted his nights. But within the hollow space where love had died, something small and fragile had taken root. Hope. It frightened him more than any battle. Hope was dangerous. Hope could be betrayed again. But as he glanced across the firelight to Naya, her face calm and unguarded in song, he could not deny what the desert had taught him. Life always finds a way to return, even after fire, even after loss. His heart was not stone after all. It was earth-scarred, yes, but capable of growth if the right seed was planted. And perhaps, just perhaps, Naya's presence was that seed. The days with Naya passed like quiet ripples on the river. For the first time in many moons, the Apache warrior felt the weight of his solitude lifting. He was still scarred, still wary, but no longer empty. Her presence steadied him like a tree rooted deep against the wind. She asked nothing of him but gave much in return, but peace is a fragile thing, and the past has a way of finding those who try to bury it. It was late afternoon when he saw the riders. 3 figures approached from the west, their silhouettes blurred against the shimmer of heat rising from the land. His body stiffened, instinct returning. He guided Naya into the shadow of the willows, his hand resting on the hilt of his knife. "Stay," he told her, his voice firm, though his eyes betrayed unease. As the riders drew closer, his heart faltered. He recognized the one in front. His wife, the woman who had once held his trust like sacred fire, and who had crushed it with careless hands. She sat straight in her saddle, her dark hair braided with red thread as it had always been, her eyes searching until they found him. "Captain," she breathed when she dismounted, calling him by the name she alone had once spoken softly. His jaw clenched. He had not heard that name on her lips since the day of betrayal, and its sound struck like a spear to his chest. Behind her, the 2 men hung back in from the village, perhaps, though their eyes shifted uneasily between the estranged pair. "What brings you here?" His voice was calm, but beneath it, tension burned like coals. She stepped closer, hesitating, her hands trembling though she tried to hide it. "I was wrong," she said. "I lost myself." "I lost you." The words clawed at him. He remembered the night he had walked into his lodge, remembered the outsider's hand on her, remembered the silence that had broken his spirit. "You lost me when you chose another," he answered, his voice sharp as flint, her eyes filled with tears. "That man meant nothing. I was foolish, blind. You are my heart, Captain. You have always been." The wound in him stirred violently. The betrayal had scarred him, but now, faced with her pleading eyes, the old memories surged, her laughter by the fire, her touch on cold nights, the way she had once made him believe in love unbreakable. For a heartbeat, he faltered. Could she be telling truth now? Could what was broken be mended? Then, from the corner of his vision, he saw Naya. She stood a few paces away, quiet, her gaze steady but unreadable. She made no move to claim him, no cry of jealousy or defense. She simply watched, as though the choice was his alone, as though she trusted the desert's lessons to guide him. His wife's voice pressed against him, urgent now. "Come back with me. The people still speak your name with respect. We can start again. Let the past be gone." Ketan's heart thundered. For so long he had imagined this moment, her returning, begging forgiveness. He had pictured himself striking her down with words or turning away in cold silence. Yet now, standing before her, all he felt was exhaustion. He looked into her eyes and saw not love, but desperation. She wanted him back not because she cherished his soul, but because she feared the emptiness she had made for herself. Her betrayal had not been an accident of weakness. It had been a choice. And though she now repented, the scar she left upon him could never be undone. Turning, he met Naya's gaze. In her there was no pleading, no demand, no deception. Only quiet strength and the truth of a woman who healed without chains. The decision crystallized within him. He stepped back from his wife. "The past is not gone," he said. "It lives in scars. And mine will not let me return to you." Her face broke, anguish twisting her features, but he did not waver. His wife had been his world once, but now she was only a ghost one he could not follow without losing himself again. He turned his back to her and walked toward Naya, each step a severing of chains. Behind him, his wife's sobs echoed, a sound that might have shattered him once. Now, it was only wind against the canyon walls, painful, but distant-eyed as he reached Naya's side, she did not speak. She only offered him her hand, steady and sure. And when he took it, the warrior felt something stronger than vengeance, stronger than despair. He felt freedom. The desert did not grant peace easily. Even after he turned his back on his wife, Ketan felt the storm raging within him. His choice had been made, but choices carry weight, and the echoes of the past do not vanish because a man wills them to. For days, the three riders lingered near the river's bend, his wife among them. She came each morning, sometimes with words, sometimes with only her presence, her eyes fixed on him with a longing that gnawed at his resolve. She spoke of home, of the people, of the future they might still have. She reminded him of their vows, their shared blood, the years they had woven together. Her voice carried memories that struck deep, twisting like thorns around his scarred heart. Naya said little. She did not try to drive the woman away. Instead, she worked quietly at her tasks, gathering herbs, tending her fire, singing at dusk. Her silence was not surrender. It was trust. She knew the choice was Ketan's to make, and that to force his heart would be to break it. But the weight of two women, one from his past, one from his present, pressed upon him until he felt as though he carried mountains on his shoulders. One night, when the moon was thin and pale, his wife came again, slipping past the edge of Naya's camp. She stood before him, her eyes bright with desperation. "You cannot throw away what we had," she whispered, her hand reaching for his. "Yes, I betrayed you, but my heart was lost in weakness. Forgive me, Ketan. We can be whole again." Her touch burned. His body remembered her warmth. His soul remembered the laughter they had once shared. And yet his mind remembered the outsider's hands on her, the betrayal that had gutted him. He pulled away. "The wound you gave me cannot be undone." Tears streaked her face, and she fell to her knees. "Then let me heal it. Do not choose a stranger over your own wife, your own blood. I am yours, you know this. I have always been." Her cries echoed in his chest, shaking the walls he had built. For a moment, doubt clawed at him. Was he a fool to walk away from the woman he had once loved more than life itself? Was love not meant to forgive? And then he turned his eyes to Naya. She was sitting by the fire, watching quietly. No tears streaked her face, no pleading words left her lips. She did not fight for him, because she knew love was not a battle of possession. Instead, she placed another log on the fire, her hand steady, her song rising softly into the night. In that moment, clarity struck him. His wife's love had been a fire bright, consuming, and reckless. It had dazzled him once, but it had also burned him to ash when her faith wavered. Naya's love was different. It was not loud. It was not desperate. It was steady, enduring, like the river that carved valleys through stone. She did not ask him to forget his scars. She honored them. She did not seek to bind him. She gave him space to choose. The trial was not in deciding between two women. The trial was in deciding between two kinds of love, the fragile flame of the past and the quiet fire of the present. He rose to his feet, his shadow stretching long in the moonlight. Looking down at his wife, he spoke with a voice that trembled but did not break. "You were once my world, but a world that falls cannot be rebuilt with broken stone. What we had is gone. I cannot walk that path again." Her sobs cut through the still night. But this time, they did not pierce him. They drifted past like the mournful cry of a coyote far away. He turned toward Naya, drawn by the calm strength in her eyes. As he sat beside her fire, she did not speak of victory, nor did she scorn the other woman. She only placed a hand lightly on his arm, anchoring him. And in that touch, Ketan felt not demand, not desperation, but truth. The trial of choice was over. He had chosen not simply a woman, but the kind of love his soul could endure. The desert had tested him with silence. His past had tested him with pain. But now, with Naya at his side, he felt a strange new strength, a strength not of war, but of healing. And though scars still marked him, for the first time he felt they might no longer define him. The morning after his choice, the air felt different. The river's song was the same, the sun rose as it always did, but within Ketten something had shifted. The chains of doubt that had bound him to his past were gone. The warrior who had once walked in silence, broken and hollow, now stood with a heart scarred yet beating strong. His wife did not return that day. Perhaps she finally understood his answer, or perhaps her pride could no longer bear the sight of him standing beside another. Whatever the reason, her absence carried no weight on him now. He had spoken his truth. The scar she left would remain, but it no longer ruled him. By the riverbank, Naya worked as she always did, her movements steady, her voice humming a low tune that drifted over the water. There was no triumph in her eyes, no gloating that she had won him. She did not treat his choice as a prize, but as something sacred, something fragile that required care. Ketten watched her in silence, his chest heavy with words he had long buried. A warrior was not quick to speak of the heart. Such matters were often shown in action, in loyalty, in quiet endurance. But Naya had taught him that healing was not in silence alone. Healing was in truth. He walked to her, his steps slow, deliberate. She looked up from the herbs in her hands, her dark eyes meeting his with a calm steadiness that unsettled him more than any battle ever had. "You stayed," he said at last, his voice low, almost uncertain. "I did," she answered simply. "Why?" Naya studied him, then set the herbs aside. "Because I saw a man who was broken, but not lost. The desert does not keep the dead, it teaches the living how to endure. You endured. That is enough." Her words struck him deeper than any plea of his wife. He felt the walls around his heart loosen, the fear of betrayal still whispering at the edges but no longer choking him. He reached for her hand, rough and scarred like his own, and held it. For a moment they said nothing. The river murmured. The wind stirred the leaves, and the world seemed to pause around them. In her touch, he felt not possession but partnership, not hunger but balance. "Naya," he said, her name strange yet powerful on his tongue. "I do not know if I can love as I once did. My heart is scarred. But what I give truly." She stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "Scars do not make love less. They make it real." The words undid him. For so long he had believed his heart too broken to trust again. But here, before him, was a woman who did not ask for a heart unscarred. She asked only for the truth of what he could give. Ketten lifted his hand to her face, calloused fingers brushing her cheek. She did not flinch, did not pull away. Her eyes closed, and in that moment he bent forward and pressed his lips to hers. It was not the fierce, consuming kiss of desperate passion he had once known. It was slow, steady, a vow written without words. It was farewell to the woman who had betrayed him, farewell to the silence of the desert, farewell to the belief that his heart could never heal. It was also a beginning. When he pulled back, Naya did not speak. She only rested her forehead against his, their breaths mingling, their silence full of meaning. The kiss had sealed more than a choice. It had sealed a future, a promise to walk forward, not chained by the past but strengthened by it. That night, as the fire burned low, Ketten lay beside her, not with the restless vigilance of a warrior guarding his wounds, but with the calm of a man who had found his place. The stars above seemed closer, brighter, as though the ancestors themselves bore witness to the vow he had made. His final kiss to Naya was not an end. It was the opening of a path of scars, of healing, of love that was quieter but stronger, forged not in untested passion but in the fire of betrayal and endurance. And for the first time since his heart had shattered, Ketten felt whole. The days after the final kiss unfolded with a gentleness Ketten had long thought impossible. No longer did he wake with the weight of betrayal pressing on his chest like a stone. The scar remained, he knew it always would, but scars were proof of survival, not chains to the past. By the river, he and Naya built a life marked not by grandeur but by truth. He hunted, fished, and mended tools, while she gathered herbs, tended the fire, and sang to the earth as she worked. Their days were simple, yet in that simplicity, Ketten found something he had never truly known before: peace. Peace, however, did not mean weakness. The warrior within him was still alive, but where once his strength had been driven by rage and pride, now it was tempered by purpose. He no longer carried his blade for vengeance, but for protection, the protection of the woman who had healed him and the fragile hope they shared. From time to time, the memory of his wife would rise, carried on the wind like smoke from a distant fire. He wondered if she had returned to the village, if she had found solace or wandered still in search of something lost. But when such thoughts came, they no longer tore at him. He would look at Naya quiet, strong, unflinching, and remember the truth. Some ghosts are meant to be left behind. One evening, as the sky burned crimson and the river glowed like molten copper, Naya spoke words that stilled him. "You do not belong to silence anymore," she said, her eyes reflecting the firelight. He frowned, uncertain. "What do you mean?" "You carry the strength of your people, Ketten. They will need you again. The warrior's path is not finished." "But now—" Her hand brushed his chest, over the place where his heart beat steady. "You will not walk it alone." Her words struck deep. He had thought his days of belonging were over, that the desert had carved him away from his people forever. But she was right. He was not a ghost, not a broken man wandering in exile. He was alive. And to be alive was to carry responsibility to his people, to the land, and to the woman who now walked beside him. That night, Ketten made a vow. Not the desperate vows of a man clinging to fleeting passion, but the steady vow of one who had endured and learned. He vowed to protect Naya, to honor her truth, and to walk the path of a warrior not for pride or vengeance, but for a love forged in silence, tested by fire and reborn from scars. When dawn broke, he saddled his horse. Naya mounted hers, carrying her bundles of herbs. Together they rode east, toward the lands where his people still lived, toward the future that awaited them. The river flowed behind them, carrying with it the echoes of his past, his wife's betrayal, the loneliness of the desert, the trial of his choice. All of it faded into the distance, leaving only what lay ahead. As the sun climbed higher, Ketten turned to Naya. She rode beside him, calm and steady, her hair lifted by the wind, her eyes fixed on the horizon. For a long moment, he simply watched her, his chest filled with something so deep it was almost painful. Not the sharp ache of betrayal, but the fullness of a man who had been broken and had found himself whole again. He leaned across the space between their horses, pressing one last kiss to her lips, a kiss not of farewell, but of promise. It was the final kiss of the Apache man, not to mark the end of his story, but to seal the beginning of a new one. And as they rode together into the horizon, the desert wind carried his redemption forward. A warrior scarred, a warrior healed, a warrior reborn by love.